We have fun here. That's what it's about, isn't it? Isn't life about having fun? So many times we forget that, don't we? Oh my gosh, there was a survey that I came across. A friend is reading this book, and I came across this survey by Martha Beck, and oh, I love it. Because it's really about abundance. It's really about how to be on this planet. And for me, this is like a guideline on how to live to answer these questions. Here are some of these questions. My life feels like a great adventure. Martha Beck. Questions for testing your social essential self-connection. My life feels like a great adventure. Often, sometimes, rarely, or never. I have fun. I laugh out loud. I feel overwhelmed by gratitude. You know that feeling? Where you feel overwhelmed by gratitude, where it just swells up within you. And sometimes, friends, it doesn't even need a reason, does it? Sometimes it just like bursts forth, right? Well, this week it wasn't bursting forth for me when I had my little notepad open, my electronic device, and I had been working for over an hour putting a whole bunch of stuff together on this little notes. Does anyone know notes on Apple products? Okay, so notes, and I have it already done. I'm like right to the last point, right? And then I need to be somewhere, so I've got it all done. And then I highlighted it so that I could send it. And I had G here with me, and she just touched that device, and whoosh, it flew away. It flew away. Now, I know enough about using my notes because, believe it or not, I've had this happen before. And my only solution has been to, as fast as I can, power it all down. Power it down, and then get to the other devices before they know what happened. Are you feeling any metaphysical vibe here? I do something, don't want to have the impact of it. I need to rush around, turn it all off until I have the impact of what happened. So I'm sitting there, but I have a group to meet with that night, so I can't rush home and get to all my devices. And surely by the time these things all communicate, they'll all know that it's gone. So what do? I sit there in this moment going, I'm not willing to lose this work. And sometimes I can tap into that part of my brain that just knows, and it just funnels everything right back, but not this time. This time, it was the kind of work that will fly away the second you let go of it. So I just sat there for a moment. I told the person who was in the office with me, you need to get out. Like, this is time. And then I proceeded to do something that I felt stupid for, that I felt silly for, that I thought, well, I already know how this works, and I already know the result, but I'm going to practice for a moment. I'm going to practice suspended judgment, and I did it. And I just said, and I got on Google, and I said, undeleting stuff that you any answers. And I've done this before, friends, and there's no answer. There is no answer. And what does it say to me? It says, take your device, shake it 3 times, and hit undo. And I was like, what kind of nasty person put that on some blog answer so people would moronically just try it, right? But I was like, this is a moment of faith. Shake, shake, shake. Undo. There was the button. A solution I had previously been completely unaware that existed, and maybe it didn't exist before. Maybe it's an update to the system. But there was a demand. I called on it. I needed it. I said now, and there it is, and I'm back in alignment. We all sometimes have baby deletes. Sometimes they're big girl deletes, sometimes they're baby deletes, but we all have things that we put out there that happen that we don't want the repercussions of. Amen? So what can we do as part of a spiritual practice when this happens? Is there anything we can do? Is it possible that in any given circumstance, we can rise to the top of the mountain and get a view from the top, rather than sitting there at the bottom and wallowing in this stuff? rather than activating the lowest vibration, rather than activating the lowest possibilities or the limitations. Wouldn't it be great if we could shake 3 times and undo when it comes to our minds and the thoughts in our minds, and when it comes to our consciousness, when we recognize that it's not going well? Now, I don't like believing this, but this is a little like, it's like folklore handed down through ministerial school, that when you're working on a talk, you start getting reasons to demonstrate it. You start kind of becoming the talk. So this week, my view was from the bottom. It was like everything was the pits. It was like this mind, and my affirmations for my mind when it does this is not the mind to think with. This is not the mind to decide with. This is not the mind to contemplate with. This is the mind just to be compassionate with and just to presence. But this isn't the mind to act from. But this mind was in the gutter. This mind was just practicing problems. Do you know what I'm talking about? Poor people that caught me this week. What are the signs that we need to shake 3 times and undo? Being stuck in a negative state, being in a place where we think life isn't working for us, ruminating or practicing what is not going well, and looking up from the bottom. Other than the fact that it exhausts you to think like that and to be in a state of consciousness like that, believe me, it exhausts everyone around you. I'm speaking for myself. I know that it exhausts me, and I know that it exhausts everyone around me when my brain is in this pattern. Why? Because it's not my true nature. I am rehearsing what doesn't work. Are we ever going to get out of what's not working by rehearsing what doesn't work? And sometimes we do it over and over thinking, well, that's going to be the key. That's going to help me get out of it. Now, there's a difference between practicing a problem or probleming than presencing something, sharing it, processing it, reaching out with a goal in mind to try to raise your consciousness, to try to elevate your mind, to try to actually get out of the confines of your own mind and to share with another expanded mind and enter into the process where 2 or more are gathered and engage the divine mind, right? So one is climbing to the top of the mountain, but one is simply practicing. It's like training a dog to be bad. Everyone knows what dogs do when they're not exactly your friend when you walk in the door. Could you take that image and put that image next to any time our brains are in the space where we are rehearsing problems, where we are launching limitations? Can you imagine it's like encouraging a dog to do what you don't want it to do? It's like going, here's a treat, baby. You just thought like that, or you just behaved like that, or you just sniffed there. Here's a treat, baby. Let's do it again. That's what we do with our mind. We are constantly creating neural pathways. It's like hiking on a trail. You know the signs that say, stay on the trail. Stay on the trail because you're paving a path. The same thing happens in our minds. The same thing happens with consciousness. We pave a path. We make a way. So if we don't want to go to that trail, if we don't want to go down that road, if we don't want to retrain the brain, then we need to stop, shake it off, and undo. Because otherwise what happens is we create the space. We put a demand on the universe. We put a demand on our experience. And we say, think in this way. Because the brain is just like a computer, right? Until we launch the kind of harmonizing between our soul power and our mechanism, our brain, our body being, until we get them into harmony and in alignment, this one just goes with the loudest voice, right? The brain and the being just says, okay, this is how she wants it done. When there's a problem, she wants me to start thinking of all the other problems attached to it. She wants me to start realizing all the other ways that life's not working. She wants me to go and get all the negative stuff, and she really wants to sit with it and contemplate it right now. Because she's set that framework, and that's what she's asking for. And I am just a good puppy trying to do exactly what my master says. And we do this unknowingly, don't we, friends? We forget to allow ourselves to be silly and ridiculous and to say, there is another way, and get online and call for it. Get online and demand it. Amen? But it is our birthright to demand it. It is part of our being co-creators. We are made in the image and the likeness of the great giver, the source of this universe. We are not separate from God. We are not separate from each other. Separation is a complete illusion, and limitation is an illusion. All you have to do is really look at how nature lives itself to believe this truth. It is the limited self, the sense of separation, that creates the pain and suffering, because we don't so often put demands on ourselves that raise things higher. In Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth, he goes on to talk about this demand, quoting Unity's favorite, Lessons in Truth, Emily Cady. Emily Cady said, "One of the uttering truths in this universe is that there is already provided a lavish abundance for every human want. In other words, the supply of every good always awaits the demand. Another truth is that the demand must be made for the supply before the supply can come forth to fill it." The demand must be made before the supply can come forth to fill it. Can we recognize that the demand we make sometimes is a demand for the opposite of what we're looking for? It takes faith to step into creating a demand on the universe, on yourself, that is highly elevated. Eric Butterworth goes on to say, "You may be looking for some magic formula, some new metaphysical cliche that will change things. But if you want to change your life, you will have to alter your thoughts. The whole of infinite substance is present where you are. But you will have to get that awareness into your consciousness by your own discipline and commitment." He says it is time to take charge of your mind. It is time to take charge of your mind. Because wherever your mind is, it will start looking for evidence to fulfill that picture. It will start looking for validation for that feeling. It will start looking for evidence and agreement for limitation. So if we want to break through and break out of limitation, break out of our suffering, break out of these patterns that no longer serve the highest good, we have to change our minds, and we have to make a different demand. And too often we rehearse our worries. A friend shared this quote with me, that the size of your worry list indicates the size of your God. Whew. Anyone else have a list? It's time to unplug the power from behind that list and just see that as being what the mind does. No energy with it, no power with it, no fueling it, no light, no having a little celebration around it, getting friends to gather and circle up, hold hands, start throwing more into it. Yeah, and this, and this, and this. It's time to get a view from the top. Eric Butterworth says, getting a view from the top is a powerful way to live. It's a powerful insight to live by. He says, always get the view from the top. Before you react in negativity to people, conditions, or things, take a moment to lift up your eyes unto the hills. Contemplate all the changing, challenging experiences from the highest possible point of view. Can we really digest that? Really metabolize it? Not for the times that we're feeling well and thinking well. Can we metabolize it so that it is triggered in the moment we realize we are like an untrained dog sniffing in the wrong place? That was supposed to be funny. I'm funny when I don't think I'm funny, and I'm not funny when I try to be funny. That must be another principle and another law of the universe. He says, regardless of the appearances of conflicts or limitations, see all things from the awareness of the allness of life and the ever-presence of substance. From the view from the top, you will see things creatively, leading to an attitude that is constructive and optimistic. He goes on to say this, you may go through life feeling only the weight of circumstances, never able to appreciate the precious nature of life. Can you feel that? Can you feel the time that I have wasted, that you have wasted, that we have wasted collectively, rehearsing the worries and feeling the weight of circumstances, when in truth, always awaiting us is the invitation to experience the preciousness of life. Breathe into that. If we want to check that time as not wasted, then it's ours to get involved. It's ours to take charge and say, I won't let that time that I spent be wasted. I am awake and I am aware now. He says, contrasting the view from the high building is like viewing the city from the sewer. Can we recognize the moments we're viewing the city from the sewer? Butterworth says that when we turn our creative flow on within us, he says, you begin to experience an I am positive I can attitude, which turns on the power and the skills needed to accomplish. When you believe you can, the how develops. When you believe you can, the how develops. He goes on to say, you are you, a unique individualization of the universal creative process. It calls for knowing, really knowing, that you are spiritual beings living in a limitless universe, endowed with the whole potential energy flow of the universe. We are endowed with the whole potential energy flow of the universe. But it takes the right mind to be there. And sometimes our minds are not there. Some people may experience it with their job life, with their relationship life, but there's always a view from the top, no matter what we're talking about. No matter what it is that is the struggle, no matter if it's a global concern or if it's an internal concern, there is a view from the top. And friends, why not take the view from the top, right? Because the only thing that can happen is that we will fulfill a higher vision than a view from the bottom. That one's pretty much assured. We'll stay in lack and limitation. As it relates to jobs, Eric Butterworth says this. He says, to step out of the idea that a job is a means to an end, to advancement, to materialism. He encourages us to find the joy in the job, to find yourself in it, and to make a life with it, saying this, think of your work not as a place to make a living, but as an opportunity to make a life. There is no job with a future in it. There is no job with a future in it. The future is in the one who does the job. The future is in the one who does the job. Sometimes we think we are practicing these principles, and in fact we are, but there is an elevated invitation to practice them at a different level. A lot of times when we want to get to the top of the mountain, we practice gratitude. And most commonly, we practice gratitude by counting blessings, by looking at what's happening around us. Check in on this one. Eric Butterworth says this, that sometimes, instead of counting their blessings, they count their envies. Instead of counting their blessings, they count their envies. He says, he is so talented. She has so many lovely things, or I wish I had a lovely home like they have. As a result of this very subtle process, they develop, paradoxically, ungrateful hearts. He says, to pray for prosperity out of a sense of complaint or discouragement is to effectively compound the problem. You may pray for improved financial conditions, but if you are feeling poor, your feeling is the consciousness you will be projecting. The grateful heart draws to itself great things. The ungrateful heart, the discouraged, complaining, covetous level of thought will draw limited things to itself. Get a view from the top. He goes on to talk about gratitude as being a power, being a force inside of us, being something that can happen not because of anything, not as a result, not as a reactionary emotion, but it is a divine faculty. It is a birthright to step into it. It is ours to stir up gratitude. All we need is a desire to feel it and an open heart, and to begin to practice it. To ask and put a demand on this universe and on the internal self, recognizing that we will fill whatever demand is, because that's just how it works. It's not evil, it's not awful. If we're not calling it higher, nothing else will. I think it's Denmark. Is it Denmark that has some of the happiest people? Right? Oh my gosh. Look at the stuff coming out of Denmark. I was just reading this article, and it was on children, young children in school. And they have an hour a day. I didn't even bring my notes for this, but they have an hour a day, and it's this weird word. I don't know how to say it really. But it's this hour a day that's like community time. And people have written books on this to try to export this positive good to the rest of the world. But it's about community time, and it's about bringing your problems, spending an hour a day that is in their school session that is important and valuable, critical in fact, to bringing their problems together to collectively start solving them. And if they have that group time and no one has any problems to solve, they spend the time together having just simply meaningful connection. Period. Meaningful connection. Just supporting each other, being together. And what the studies have found is that this creates empathy, that this, saturated in a community and in a consciousness, that competition and getting from each other is not the prized possession, but that supporting each other, compassion and engaging each other is. That they have taught these young ones to grow up knowing that there are solutions, that they can have an I can do it attitude, that they can reach out, that they have community, that there is more in this universe than what is just in their minds, what they are rehearsing, right? That there is a whole field of good out there, and that there is support. And they generate beautiful energies of compassion and empathy and happiness. Are we willing to cast a demand on that? Are we willing to stand for that? The more we do it internally, the more we do it in our own life, the more we will begin to do it collectively. Because the possibilities that are here for us collectively are immense and are incredible. And the things that we think have not been invented yet, or could not be solved, or could not be resolved, or are a problem, we simply cannot stay in that limitation, because the truth is that we live in an infinite universe, and that there is a possibility we can shake it 3 times and hit undo. Carolyn Mace says, "This is an extraordinary moment to be alive. We are at the greatest turning point in the history of civilization. In between understanding ourselves as a small creature of the earth who is limited to 5 senses, and discovering our true cosmic size nature." Rumi says, "You suppose you are the trouble, but you are the cure. You suppose you are the lock on the door, but you are the key that opens it." Namaste.